No, I'm going to explain to you real quick.
Continue walking.
But don't be rolling out. There's a reason for it.
You got it right.
Obviously, you have a big following. You are pretty vocal on social media about Bitcoin. How'd you get started?
Sure. I mean, I got started a while ago, but I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like in college, and I think I came across the Rolling Stone article and everyone was talking about it. And, friends in college were like, oh, you could use Bitcoin to buy drugs. I was like, oh, okay, what's this Bitcoin thing? And, I had a stint playing video games, and I knew about like e-gold and things like that. And, being someone who was born into the internet, it just made sense to me. Digital money, okay, that makes sense. Maybe I'll buy some and, see what happens. So I bought a little bit in 2013, kind of at the top, and then we totally crashed and tanked. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I better hold on to this. There's no use in panic selling it. So held on to it. Didn't take my own advice. I was talking to a friend. I was like, oh, I should probably just buy more. Unfortunately, did not do that. A few years go by, and Bitcoin's not dead. It's still around. So I'm paying a little more attention. But I'm still kind of focused on other things. I went to film school, and I was busy with that part of my life and kind of getting into the film industry. But as I was coming out of film school, it was 2017, and it was the bull run. And like many people, I was just obsessed. I woke up every morning. My roommates and I would talk about crypto at the time before I kind of went full Bitcoin. And I didn't know what I wanted to do in the industry, but I knew that that this was something I had to be a part of. I had to work at the time in crypto. And so I was working on some films, some really bad independent films that I hope no one ever sees. Please don't go look them up. And I was like, I got to get out of this hellhole of an industry. And so I started working in the crypto industry. And I actually started lampooning it. I started making fun of it because I saw all these scams and all these, these people trying to take people's money and all these pump and dumps. And I was like, there's a lot of bad shit going on here. And as I was doing that and kind of exploring all the shit coins, a couple of good people reached out to me. They saw that I wasn't an unintelligent person. They said, look, what are you doing? Like, stop looking at these nonsense coins. You need to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, because even, back in 2013, I didn't know what a blockchain was. I hadn't really done my research on Bitcoin. And so a few good people reached out, and I started listening to, the Tales from the Crypt podcast and reading a few books. And, next thing I know, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. And, I made my way into to what I consider the really important aspect of what's really going on, which is Bitcoin. And now I'm working at Swan as their creative director, where I get to kind of take some of my old film skills and put them to use and, educate people. And I'm basically just all in.
What do you think of? My son was a big player and played FIFA on, I don't know whether it was Xbox or something. And I watched him get a lot of digital coin, and I associate what you talked about earlier with gaming, with digital currency. And now you kind of have this generational shift where my son was already using that. He's 22 now. He's been using it for something better part of 10 years, I think, right? Or maybe it was a little less, maybe 7 years. Do you think the current generation was dramatically affected by that? I think that's Captain Obvious. But I remember watching him buy more coin, earn more token, and really being immersed in the process of buying more skins and being able to have a better team and trade players. And now you see that digital thing happening where that's all, in terms of crypto, looking at all the use and functionality of it. Is that how big of a driver is that?
I mean, I know it got me in there, and I think it's definitely a driver with people these days. I think the difference, though, and what's really cool is, like, back in the day, or with FIFA or World of Warcraft, or people playing these games where there are these in-game economies, the money was fake, right? Like, there was no actual control over it. You couldn't take your money out of the game, right? Like, Bitcoin is digital money, and it's yours. It actually it empowers people, whereas before you're kind of stuck in these walled gardens of these money-making machines of the video game companies. And we're actually starting to see Bitcoin get infused into video games, which to me, that's one of the most exciting things.
Where people are they're paying for things inside a video game with crypto?
Not quite that, but more like play to earn. Like there's a company called Zebedee that's built a platform where you can play CS:GO. It's like a first-person shooter, and if you shoot somebody else, you take their Bitcoin. You can put real money on the line. So it's it's evolving. It's still young,
it's
but
like a form of gambling a little bit. A little form of gambling.
Yeah, a little bit.
So you're the creative director for Swan. I don't want to get too far in the podcast without knowing what Swan is. So can you tell our audience what Swan is, how you use it, and how you came about being part of it?
Sure thing. So Swan Bitcoin is, I think, the best way to accumulate Bitcoin with automatic recurring buys and instant buys. We're sort of a competitor to the Coinbases and the cash apps of the world. But what sets us apart is that, we're Bitcoin only, and we're there to sort of guide people on their journey. We like to say that education is our marketing. So we put a real focus on educational content and teaching people. And, everyone at the company is a hardcore Bitcoiner. So we all live it, we all love it, and we're all here for this Bitcoin revolution. And, we kind of started actually as a way to give Bitcoin, and the company evolved into Swan, partially because there were a lot of Bitcoiners out there who didn't want to send their friends and family to what I called the shitcoin casinos, to the Coinbases of the world, to the places that are just focused on trading. Like Bitcoin to me Bitcoin's my savings account. Bitcoin is how I escape from inflation. So what do I need to learn how to trade for? Like I'm an artist. That's not my thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas Swan is like, you can send your family there, your mom, your grandma, your dad, and know that they're taken care of. And so to me, that's a real difference.
So it's a safe environment.
Exactly. Like we encourage withdrawals. Like we want people to take self-custody, but we don't force people to do that. But we kind of hold your hand and guide you to the point where hopefully you'll be ready to really take advantage of everything that Bitcoin has to offer.
Well, it's really been an evolving market. I was just thinking, of Mt. Gox and all the things that I remember back when I had a guy work for me who mined 5,000 Bitcoin, and it was $5. And he needed money, and he had to sell it in some weird way where he sold it to someone and then they sent him the cash. And I'm like, you're sending Bitcoin and then hoping they're going to send you money? And then cash came in the mail. And I thought, wow, that really seems like the wrong thing to do, right? But he sold 5,000 Bitcoin for $5, got about $25,000 because I know there were some fees involved. Mm-hmm. And obviously today that's worth $180 million or some ridiculous number. And I've been in financial services for 32 years, so I've watched Bitcoin start from really nothing. The pizza that's sold and all. You learn about this and go, "Oh, the people are crazy." And then now we're a miner. We just spent $162 million on buying new miners, the S19 XPs, 140 terahash. We're one of the first 5 companies to be invited to participate in that. I flew to Dubai. Signed a deal, was on camera with Bitmain. We're pretty hardcore into it. We bought a data center. What do you think of the Bitcoin mining industry? I know it's a necessary part of the ecosystem, but where does Swan kind of fall in line with that?
Swan is we're not miners, and we get a lot of questions about mining because I think like anyone who gets into Bitcoin is immediately drawn to the idea of like, oh, I can plug a machine into the wall and start getting Bitcoin, right? I think everyone's kind of dabbled with that idea to some extent. For us, miners they're a vital part of the ecosystem. They secure Bitcoin. They're what our freedom is built on, right?
Sure.
So, right now it's an exciting time to be a miner. It's never been more profitable. It's hard to get your hands on S19s.
Impossible.
So,
right. so do you come down? Do you come down on the side of the Winklevi who think it's a store of value, or do you see it as a ultimately on the Lightning Network a payment processing? How do you see it? Are you more of a Michael Saylor where it's a store of value and you're not really going to exchange it all the time, or do you see it as all of the above?
I would definitely say all of the above. Like we look at the history of money, right? And everyone always says that money has to start off as a collectible, and then it becomes, it has this trajectory that's always happened, like the way that gold became money, right? But Bitcoin is unlike any money that we've ever seen. And I think Bitcoin, one of the cool things about Bitcoin is that it's different things to different people, right? Like I went down to El Salvador recently, where they made Bitcoin legal tender, and to see the way that people treat Bitcoin there, it blows your mind. I was in a pupuseria, a little place where they're selling the local food there, and in walks a group of, I think, 8 to 10-year-old kids. They pull out their smartphones, they use the Lightning Network to buy cornmeal to take home, and I'm just like, this is game over. Bitcoin's won. But at the same time, we're living in a world in which they're printing, I don't even know how much money they're printing every second of the day, right? And so, to me, Bitcoin is 100% a store of value, but for those people in need, for those people who want to spend it, why not? Spend and replace, use it as your savings account, keep some Bitcoin to use in the world of video games and spend on skins or whatever makes you happy. But, it's all those things and more.
How was El Salvador, by the way? Did you feel safe there or no?
I did actually. I asked people about it when I was down there, and they basically told me that the dangerous parts of the country are kind of places that no tourist would ever go, far away in the north where the gangs are. But I went to Bitcoin Beach, to the little town of El Zonte, which is kind of like the nucleus of Bitcoin down there. And, everyone was smiling and welcoming. And, I never felt in danger whatsoever. It's a really beautiful place. I think everyone should go check it out.
And what do you think about what they're doing down there in terms of Bitcoin City, the idea of giving all their citizens Bitcoin and them making an illegal tender? Obviously you're pro that, so am I. But in terms of it actually happening and acting out and it becoming a way of life, what do you think about what's happening there?
So far, my expectations have actually kind of been blown away. In Bitcoin Beach specifically, I think about at the time, and this was before the law went into effect, most of the merchants there, they accepted Bitcoin. Some of them liked it, some didn't. I met people who, were anti-Bitcoin because they were anti-Bukele. They were against the president. But from what I've seen so far, the adoption rate has just been skyrocketing. The country is, Bitcoin's gone up. They've been able to use some of those profits to build schools and hospitals and all sorts of things. So to me, some might call it an experiment. Some might say it's, risk on. I don't think it's risk on. I think this is something that is going to pay off big time. I think El Salvador is going to become the Singapore of Central America. I think it was Nick Carter who originally said that. But, it's going to change everything down there. And I think we're already starting to see it. And the one thing that I'm interested in seeing how it plays out, I'm wondering, maybe you have some thoughts on this. It's kind of a big FU to the IMF. And this is like the first time a country has finally said, like, look, we're done. We're going to do it our way. We're going to use Bitcoin and we'll see what happens.
I think people, let me answer that. I'll give you my opinion about this. When I'm a student of history, and when I went to school, high school, college, I really figured out that history repeats itself over time. People don't see that. Like, every generation thinks their problems are the worst problems ever, and oh my God, the next election is the most important ever. Every politician ever says that. But what people don't understand is your problems today are the most important problems, but you can learn from the past. People say that, it's cliché, but it's true. And I don't think people in America, United States specifically, understand that the actual currency of this country has not really been steady for the last 200 years. And if you look at what that cost structure is, when JP Morgan kind of rescued the treasury, bought gold, all the things that he did, there was sort of one man in charge and they built the Federal Reserve around it. This is still an experiment. And I think people don't understand until they have a shock. And I'm going to give you an example of which is probably far off from really reality in terms of why a person loses their innocence, right? I lost my innocence on 9/11. I worked on Wall Street. I believed that we were the good guys. I didn't think anyone really wanted to hurt us. I know the Iranians had a problem during the Carter administration with the hostages. But when I saw my friends die at World Trade Center, the bloom was off the rose for me. I learned, like, wow, it could be different. In 2008, it was different again. And then I saw the government taking property from people. I saw a guy who was a drug dealer who was selling drugs in his parents' home, and the government took their home from them. And they resold the home. They took all their assets. And I understood why Bitcoin erupted from this, what the crisis of 2008 was. And so I don't think people really understand that these events for people today are real. Like, yes, there were different times in 1941 when Pearl Harbor happened. Everyone has their issues at that time. But people think things last forever, and they don't. And the idea that the current currency system, which is plagued with issues, right? Meaning it used to cost $1 a gallon for gas, now it's $6 in some places, that politicians are in charge of what they're printing. And because of this device right here, the phone, people have figured out that they can become digital. And Bitcoin represented freedom for these people to not have to rely on the government for everything, right? And so I answered your question in a weird way by saying the IMF is like the government to these individual countries, right? And El Salvador basically said, we're going to try things a little different now. You, denominated in dollars, are not going to control our destiny. We're going to control our own destiny. We're going to mine our own Bitcoin. We're going to take some of our fiat, and we're going to go and put it on balance sheet, and we're going to control some of our own destiny. It's a great experiment. But it's not as unusual as people think. There was a small country, we were a colony, and we broke away from England. We created our own currency. This is what happens. And so to me, Bitcoin, like Michael Saylor talks about, is becoming the world's currency. It's becoming the world's store of value, where not one person can control the process, right? And I just think that part is unstoppable, and people don't understand it. And they're going to understand it when they wake up one day and Bitcoin's $1 million a coin. And they don't understand you don't have to have $1 million to buy Bitcoin. You can buy fractional Satoshis. You can go to Swan and you can control your own destiny. You can gift coin. You can pay things with it. You can send it to friends. This is just the beginning. And El Salvador is basically saying, hey, we're tired of getting our teeth kicked in. We're going to try something different. That's what I think. And the leader's a younger guy. And so he's saying, hey, I bought into this. I don't know who talked him into it. But I think this guy has... what did he have to lose, right? What did El Salvador have to lose? What is Venezuela, of any country out there, Venezuela that has more oil than pretty much anybody? They're up there in the regions of Saudi Arabia, tons of oil. What would it be like for them to do the same thing? Take those petrodollars and put that into Bitcoin. I think El Salvador represents people saying, oh, it's just El Salvador. Yeah, It'll be others too, right? It's the tip of the iceberg, and you needed someone that wasn't the mainstream to do it, and for them to pave the way to show other countries, hey, the IMF can't kick us around. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to try more than one thing. We're not going to just buy into begging for money from the IMF effectively. I don't know. Did I cover that the way you thought I would? I mean, what are your thoughts?
No, I think you're totally right. I mean, people underestimate El Salvador, right? I mean, going back to Singapore as an example, how small is Singapore? It's tiny, but how big is their economic impact? It's huge, Or go back, you said you're a student of history, look back at the empire that England had.
Sure.
England was a tiny nation, and yet they controlled the world because they embraced, sailing technology. So I think you're on the money there, but the one thing that's really, I think, mind-boggling to me, and to contrast it with the Venezuelas of the world, for example, this guy, Nayib Bukele, in order to embrace Bitcoin, he said, what do I have to lose? There's one thing he had to lose, and that's the ability to print money. Now, yeah, he could go and, make his own fiat currency again if he wanted to, but, he has let go of power that has traditionally been held by rulers, and I think we'll see how it plays out, but I think that he actually just has this vision of the future, and he can see past the sort of individual selfishness that a lot of rulers might have, right? He's giving something up so that his country can prosper. And by embracing Bitcoin, by, ceding some of your power to the monetary policy of Bitcoin, he knows that that's going to vastly improve his own country. So it's a wild time. I need to go back there and visit and see what's happening in a year from now, because I think it'll be dramatically different.
I haven't studied how he did it. I mean, he obviously had treasury money. He obviously had support from his own country, his own exports. He had on balance sheet capital wherever they held the state treasury. He obviously produces state treasury dollars to some capacity, and he's doing that and putting that on balance sheet. So more power to him. I think it's amazing. What are the other countries that you know of right now that are really adopting it? Is anyone really doing what El Salvador does yet? I heard that Ukraine was going to do it, but then I haven't. I mean, who's actually doing something that El Salvador is doing right now?
That's the thing. I don't think there's anyone out there like El Salvador. There's some countries that have, not, made it decriminalized or have kind of made the regulatory environment better for Bitcoin. But, there's been rumors here and there of countries, that might embrace it in the way El Salvador has, but nobody so far. I feel like the world is kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens. But it's just the first domino, and I think more will fall soon, especially in places like Central America.
I don't think people understand that there's not actually really a printing press. What actually happens is the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, they go in and digitally send more money into the system, and once Congress prints the ability for them to do that in a bill of law and says, hey, we approve this budget, the Treasury sells notes, the Fed buys them, and it's a digital entry, and all of a sudden now there's more digital money that's in the banking system that's got to get out there. I don't know how this plays itself out, but what are your thoughts around Michael Saylor's? I mean, he has become like a legendary in his commentary. What are your thoughts about him as a spokesman and the $3.5 billion he's put on balance sheet that's now worth $7 billion?
I think it's going to go down as the greatest series of trades in history. I think he's one of the spokespeople we needed. He's not, there's some issues that I disagree. Like, he's not so big on privacy and things like that. But, in terms of bringing Bitcoin to the mainstream and making it palatable for people in the corporate world, and, he set off this latest bull run. I don't think anyone can kind of, dispute that. That's what started it. That's what brought us to where we are. And, he's a very eloquent guy. His metaphors are, poetic in a way. Part of me thinks he's got a screenwriting team sitting there just, writing quotes for him, but I don't think so. He's a smart guy. So
he MIT guy. I understand you're going to be writing a book or have a book coming out. I'd love to chat about that. Obviously, it's about Bitcoin, I assume. Can you kind of give audience a little heads up, because you've been in there a long time. I'm sure people are going to want to read it. Can you tell us about it?
Sure thing. It's called Rhyming Bitcoin, and it came out because there's a lot of so-called beginner books out there, which are great, but a lot of them kind of miss the mark, and they don't excite people in the way that I thought I could excite people. And so I put my thinking cap on, and I said to myself, what would Dr. Seuss do if he was a Bitcoiner like myself? So the entire thing is written in rhyme. I've got a Chilean Bitcoin artist who's fantastic, and she's doing the illustrations now. And so we're actually aiming to have it come out by the Bitcoin conference in Miami next year.
Yeah, so, we'll be there. We'll be there for sure.
Oh, excellent.
And it's called Rhyming Bitcoin?
Rhyming Bitcoin, yeah.
You got to tell us about it. We have a big audience at Risk On, and I'd love to get some copies. I'd love to bring you on the show. You ever make it to Vegas?
My brother loves Vegas. I have a love-hate relationship, but I'm here in LA, so it's very close. Oh. Happy we can easily make the drive.
Oh, I grew up in Orange County.
Oh, perfect.
I know you're a film guy, and you went to film school. I understand you're involved in some documentaries. What are you doing there in the documentary side? Are you still using your film skills? Are you using it for educational purposes? What's happening in your film career?
Sure. So it's funny enough, I actually swore off filmmaking. I'd had enough. I said to myself, I'll never make another movie again unless it's for Bitcoin. And a few years later, over at Swan, we decided that we're kind of in a unique position to bring together creators and financiers and put together Bitcoin-related content, because there are some great documentaries and amazing shows out there, but there isn't a lot of content that is sort of cinema Netflix quality. So that's what we're focused on right now. At least that's what I'm focused on right now with Swan Studios. We put out a few sort of short documentaries. We've got a few feature-length ones in the works, a narrative feature that we're involved in, and I'm taking meetings left and right with anyone in the Bitcoin industry who's a filmmaker, and seeing what we can do. Because in my background, I studied international relations and propaganda, and I studied how all sorts of different governments use their film industries to push their agendas. And to me, a good film is better than a good book. It's the reason why an image is better than words, right? You can really reach people and pull out their emotions and kind of get to the why something is important, and Bitcoin is important. So if we can bring the power of film to bear on something like Bitcoin, I think we can really make an impact. So we've been involved in a few films so far, one of which is called This Machine Greens. It's made by a really talented filmmaker out of the UK named Jamie King. And basically, it's only about 30 minutes, but it's an attempt to bring together some of the brightest minds around Bitcoin and dispel the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around Bitcoin's energy consumption. Because Bitcoin, obviously consumes a lot of energy, but it's worth it. And there's good reasons why. And much of the energy that's used is green energy. And it's something that Bitcoiners have been fighting for a long time. So we wanted to make sort of a definitive film that you can show folks and say, look, watch this. Stop worrying about Bitcoin's energy consumption. It's worth it.
I'll definitely watch that for sure. I'll definitely watch that. I get a lot of grief. We use nuclear energy, nuclear power, and it's just such nonsense. They don't realize what search engine companies use, what data centers use. Far more consumption than Bitcoin mining. It's just it's a farce. Mm-hmm. It's a political statement. It's a way of trying to discourage the mining industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other film, though, is it's a shorter film, but it's one that it's just infused with hope. It's called Bitcoin is Generational Wealth. It was written by one of my coworkers over at Swan, a guy named Tomer Strolight, and the filmmaker is a young guy out of Canada named Matt Hornick. And it's made with found footage, but it basically imagines the world. Well, actually, it takes you back to 1948, and then it takes you to 2148. Sorry, and it imagines this world of hyper Bitcoinization. Bitcoiners have been talking about it, but this film is basically puts to visuals what would that look like, and it's one of the most hopeful videos I've ever seen. So highly recommend checking it out.
Got it. I asked the question earlier about what do you think the future of Bitcoin looks like out 6 months, maybe 18 months. What do you think is kind of next on the horizon? It's hard to say, right? Everyone was saying that we'd be at 100K by December, and who knows? To me, we've seen the things that are important are sort of the upgrades, the things that you don't see. Taproot just came out. The mining space is more resilient than ever. We had the China ban, and look what's happened. We bounced back. Taproot was a big deal. Taproot was a big deal. I don't think people understand that. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about Taproot a little bit?
On the technical side?
No. I actually prefer you not to be technical. I just want to hear your thoughts on what Taproot is, or kind of what, when you think about it, in terms of simple terms for people to understand what it kind of means. It's obviously going to make things easier, more efficient, but do you have any commentary on it at all?
I think the really important thing about Taproot, among other things, is that it shows that Bitcoin can upgrade in a way that is nonviolent. In years previously, there were hard forks, and Bitcoin Cash came about, and all these other things. And these days, a lot of people, at least in the crypto side of things, tend to say that Bitcoin is like a pet rock. It doesn't change, it doesn't improve. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Taproot proves that, and we did it in a way with almost, I wouldn't say without any disagreement, but with the right kinds of disagreements. We're arguing over something that's so important, and so when Taproot was enabled, it basically showed to the world that, look, Bitcoin can change, it can get better, and it's going to continue doing so. To me, that's what's exciting. It's
an upgrade that makes it more efficient, allows you to use smart contracts, better smart contracts. Mm-hmm. It allows, like the Lightning Network, for more speed and usability. There's a lot of things that Taproot way over my technical capabilities. In terms of going back to that 100,000 of Bitcoin, I know that that's in people's head. But when you listen to Michael Saylor talk about digital gold and actual gold and how they dilute gold at 2% a year, and you start to pay attention to the fact that you can't really dilute Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin, then you can see that scenario where you have a $10 trillion asset. And so inevitably you see this growing to a big multi-trillion dollar asset class. My question to you is, do you know something on the horizon that no one else knows, or you think, how big could this be? I mean, one of the things I'm looking at is Fidelity just is launching a ETF in Canada. The U.S. is still behind in doing a cash ETF. They clearly have a futures ETF. But in your mind, is it unstoppable now? Is Bitcoin unstoppable, or do you still think that people are going to try to kill it?
Oh, I think people are going to try to kill it, but I also think it's unstoppable. I think Bitcoin is going to eat the monetary premium of almost everything else on planet Earth. When people finally come to the conclusion, and kicking and screaming, some of them, they might fight against it, but why wouldn't you store your value in something like Bitcoin that's completely liquid at all times? You look at the real estate markets now, and it's crazy. But Bitcoin fixes that. Bitcoin fixes a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take some time, but when push comes to shove, there's a meme out there, infinity over 21 million, right? That's what the value of Bitcoin is. Huh. There's no limit as long the more people there are, the higher the price of Bitcoin will go. At some point it'll probably reach an equilibrium, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that right now.
How do people follow you on social media?
My handle is at BVBTC on Twitter and Instagram. There are many imposter accounts. Please beware. Do not send them any Bitcoin. They are trying to scam you.
Yeah, we'll definitely put up the right address for everyone down in the comments section. We'll have it on the screen so everyone can see that and make sure they can follow you there. In terms of Swan, how do they find it? How do they use it? Is there a referral code that you can give them, something they can do to sign up? What has to happen?
Sure. We actually, if you'd like, we can get one set up for you. We can do swanbitcoin.com/Todd or /Todd Ault. We can put that in the show notes for you and get that for you pretty soon. And if they use that link, they'll get $10 of Bitcoin when they sign up.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So it's a great program. And honestly, if for people, even if they're not ready, we do things like we give away free books. So you can go to swanbitcoin.com/free book. You'll get a copy of Inventing Bitcoin. It's one of my favorite Bitcoin books out there. And, if you just want to get your feet wet and learn a little bit first, we just want people to learn about Bitcoin.
What do you think about you? I would really like to talk to you about, we have a Risk On convention happening in May. Hopefully you can come out and join us, be a speaker at the conference, maybe have Swan there, talk about the product, etc. That'd be great. I mean, do you do any public speaking like that?
Sure. I'd love that. We've got our whole team is made up of Bitcoin educators. So we've got plenty of people who are always looking for opportunities to go out and spread the good word about Bitcoin. Although, Todd, Bitcoin it's a risk-off asset. Okay, I take umbrage with the fact that you say, I know you love risk on, but I'm just kidding here.
Well, it's a different analogy about risk on. So, the Wall Street has taken that in terms of investing. I've taken it in terms of how I've changed what I've done in terms of not conforming to the norm. I mean, I founded a biotech company. I've taken over several companies publicly, and I've taken a lot of heat for that. But my risk on moment, probably similar to yours, was how do I step out of, I grew up basically in HUD housing in Fullerton, California, single mom, never had a father till I was 13, was not part of the traditional education system, did not have anyone wanting to pay for my school like I did for my kids. And so for me, risk on is about being focused, taking on an initiative. There's an acronym there. Part of the risk on is like for R is relationships, developing relationships. And I cover that in what risk on means to me. I understand Wall Street has that risk on, risk off. To me, the risk on moment is not being in Bitcoin. I actually think people have to understand that I have made these mistakes myself where I have decided, why would I need a cell phone when I can just use my pager and I can go to a payphone? People have to understand the world is digitalizing and there's a generational gap here. And the younger generation, people like my kids who have never known their life without their smartphone, they don't want money. When I give them cash, they say, what am I going to do with this? Send me a Venmo. Send me a Cash App. I don't want this. I don't want this money. And there's a revolution going on. I think it's not stoppable. You cannot stop what's happening. And therefore, the risk on moment is not embracing it and understanding it. Hey, Brekkie, I appreciate you being here. I love the fact that you got started in Bitcoin when you were younger and you continue to be an advocate for it at Swan. We're going to put up on the screen how you guys can get $10 of Bitcoin if you sign up for Swan. Brekkie, follow him on Twitter, follow him on Instagram. Obviously, he's an educator. This is really important for those people out there who want to learn about Bitcoin, want to do it in a safe environment. You heard Brekkie talk about his family being able to be there, etc. Brekkie, thank you so much for being on the show. Obviously, I'm excited. We think a lot alike in the sense that you like Bitcoin and I like Bitcoin. Hopefully, we can see you at the RiskOn conference. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Todd. I'd love to be there and appreciate the opportunity to come on.
All right, guys. This is Brekkie. Obviously, follow him on Twitter. I'll put him up. I'll tweet a couple times. Make sure he's out there for you guys. Take care, everyone.
No, I'm going to explain to you real quick.
Continue walking.
But don't be rolling out. There's a reason for it.
So, yeah, you got it right.